So, you want to be a real estate investor, but where do you start? How do you know what information and sources to trust? That's where I come in. I'm Jonny Catani, and this is the Investor Relations Real Estate Podcast. Hey guys, real quick, before we start, go to investwithkatani.com and download my free ebook, Is Commercial Real Estate Recession Proof? Now to today's show. What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Investor Relations Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Jonny Catani, and I'm joined today by David Pere. David Pere joined the Marine Corps in August of 2008. Since that time, he has lived in or traveled to many unique places around the world, including a combat tour in Afghanistan. David got started in real estate investing in 2015. He house hacked a duplex with the FHA loan and lived in it for a little while until getting married to his beautiful wife, Kimberly, and receiving orders to Hawaii. While stationed in Hawaii, David bought a 10-unit apartment in Missouri and has had continued success with real estate investing. Now with over 100 rental units in his personal portfolio, David has achieved complete financial freedom. Through these experiences, From Military to Millionaire was born with the goal of teaching service members and veterans how to build wealth through real estate investing, entrepreneurship, and personal finance. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, brother. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Very excited for today's conversation. We had a very long off-camera conversation, which I always enjoy. Okay, so we kind of allude to it here in the intro. You house hacked a duplex with an FHA loan. What was that like? And, kind of take us back a little bit before that. What even you picked up and decided to do that for, and then, kind of where you're at now.
Yeah. So, ironically enough, it was, the book that everyone always talks about. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but I read it. Well, I didn't even read it. Someone handed me the CD to listen to it on audio, because somebody was trying to get me into Amway, which is like, one of those multi-level marketing companies to sell energy drinks and whatever, which I actually joined. And then like a month in realized that he didn't actually care about me or my success at all. And, whatever. So I bounced, but I read the book and I was like, oh, this is cool. I like this. This got me all hyped. And then I read more of the Purple Library, Robert's books and his team. And then I stumbled across Bigger Pockets. And because I was like, anytime I heard a word or a concept that I didn't understand, I would just go to Google. And what I realized is like almost every time I was Googling, Bigger Pockets was what came up with the answers. So I was like, what is this Bigger Pockets thing? So I joined the forum and signed up and started reading some of their books. And that was probably, man, I wish that I could tell like the timestamp for when I finished that CD, because I swear it was like October. I mean, this was a very short fuse. I had the epiphany, and then my apartment lease that I was renting came up to, it was over December 31st. And so I was like, man, I could either keep renting this 2-1 apartment for $550 a month, or I could go look at duplexes. And so I went and looked at duplexes, and I found one where the monthly payment was $615. And so I went from $550 a month to $615, but it had a tenant already paying $425. So even after utilities and insurance, I was saving like another $150 a month. And then when I moved out, it cash flowed. And so it's like the stars aligned because of that, but also because I had no money and my Harley got totaled, and the insurance money, like the settlement from that, was what I used for the down payment to be able to afford the FHA. So it was kind of like just this like perfect timing of things that was allowed me to close on the property. And that was the kind of the aha moment that, oh, this works.
Wow. That's awesome. We love a nice perfect storm, when everything kind of comes together, and the universe just kind of is like, no, this is how it's going to be, and it's going to work for you. So you got that taste, but you went to Hawaii, and then, most people be like, yeah, duplex, and I got another. You went straight to a 10 unit. So kind of explain that, and then, kind of instantly having to be an owner, a remote owner.
Yeah. We tried to buy in Hawaii as well. In fact, one of my biggest gripes about like the VA loan is just how much people don't understand. And so the reason I used an FHA on the first property is that the guy thought you could only use the VA loan one time, the lender, which is super wrong. And so he's like, oh, don't waste it on this cheap duplex, go FHA. And so, then I moved to Hawaii, and at the time there was still a limit on your first time use for the VA loan, which there's not anymore. But at the time there was. And so the price point of all the homes on the side of the island we were stationed on was about 125 over the limit. And I didn't have the 25% down for that 125 that I would have needed, the 30 grand or 35 grand, whatever it is, to close the home. So we made 5 or 6 offers. All of them fell through, ended up living on base. So while I'm living on base, I was like driving for dollars in Hawaii, trying to find like that magical wholesale deal that'll make 50, 60 grand because it's Hawaii and there's big margins, and just nothing panned out. So I was like, you know what? I already have a property manager. I already have a property in Missouri and it's affordable. Let me just hand write a bunch of letters to duplex owners. And so I wrote, it might have been 110, 115 letters on like a yellow legal pad I had a 24-hour shift on duty. And when you're on duty, you can like read a book, and that's pretty much it. And so I was writing these letters, and I'll tell you, it was the worst like hand cramps I've ever had. And I actually that day was when I swore off writing letters and decided I was going to do like bulk mailers through, different companies. Now it's Ballpoint Marketing is who I usually go through, but I've done Yellow Letters and Evergreen and a couple other companies just because I was like, I'm never writing these again. But all that to being said, I sent out all these letters to people who owned 2, 3, and 4 units absentee in my market. And I had a couple people call back, but I had one who called back and said, hey, I've got this duplex, but I don't want to sell it. I do have a 10 unit though. I'm like, ooh, that's a little out of my comfort zone, but I don't want to be, a wimp. So I'm like, well, let me see the numbers. You want to show me the P&L and whatever. And it made sense. He was asking 240. We went back and forth and settled at 225. And this was in 2017. Yeah, 17 or 18. And so, it would been like a year and a half since my first purchase, just because I'm trying to save up money. And, and then we ended up we dropped the price from 225 to 212 and a half because of inspection stuff. And then the bank missed that memo. And so when we came to closing, the bank had enough money for the original purchase price. And they were like, well, we can either go away and come back to close tomorrow, or you can just bring less money to closing. And so I ended up getting in for, it wasn't even 5%. I think it was like 4.7% down on this, because the seller carried 10% and then the bank came in with like 85 point whatever. And so I got into this thing for $10,900 on a 212 and a half purchase. And then I recently sold it for 340, and I had done 2 refinances during that time, and it allowed me to buy other properties, and it cash flowed the whole time. So that thing was way out of my comfort zone, but I was able to justify it just by having surrounded myself with other investors and saying, hey, this is bigger than I've ever done before. Can you just look at this and tell me if you see any red flags? Like, I don't need you to run all the numbers, but just, is there anything major that I missed? And, a few of them said no. And I was like, all right, well, if they all missed it, then I'm not the only idiot. Let's go.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that so much, and incredible that you can get a 10 unit in Missouri for that back then. Cool. So now you obviously still an investor, but teach as well, wrote your book. So kind of talk about these experiences and how that's led to helping people understand this, and so they can do the same thing.
Yeah. It was January of 2018. So I deployed back in 2010, and I had a journal and a mission log. And I'd always thought it'd be cool to put them together and write a book about what like normal people went through in Afghanistan. Because all the books you see on Afghanistan, Iraq, and wars are either like 40 years later, or they're like Navy SEALs who got out and said, I don't have to be secretive anymore. Let me talk about all my awesome missions. And so I thought, well, I'll write this book about what normal dudes did. And I was talking to my buddy Brandon and was like, yo, what do you think? I was like, nobody knows who I am, and I don't have a platform, and this isn't like some inspirational story that everybody's going to like jump into, so nobody's going to read it. And he's like, well, just start a blog. I'm like, oh, well, that sounds cool. What should I blog about? I don't know, whatever you're learning in real estate from like a military angle. Nobody does that. And that was literally the conversation. I was like, that sounds like a cool idea. And so the the From Military to Millionaire wasn't even my idea. I came up with like 10 different names. They all were garbage. All my friends hated them. And one of my other friends was like, why not this? Oh, that's catchy. Cool. And then started blogging. And I mean, at the beginning, it was literally just, if I learned something, I would write an article about it. Or if I wanted to learn something, I would research it to write an article. And it was just me saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. I mean, my net worth might have been $100,000, maybe 150 when I started writing the Military to Millionaire website. And that was, January, February 2018. And, now the net worth is probably 10 times that, and a little bit over that maybe. And, we've got 100 doors, and it's kind of crazy what that platform's grown into. I mean, we're the largest like military real estate investing community of the world, if you look at all the different platforms and combined. And more importantly, people reach out all the time and say that their 401k has more money in it, or they bought a house that made sense, or, some kind of movement in the right direction because they read something I put out there, which is just super cool. Cause it's like, man, I wish someone had told me this crap when I was 18.
No joke. Yeah, that's got to be very inspirational. As someone who was just like, yeah, I'll share it. And then, here you've created this big platform. And so, you're now teaching people about this and helping them. And I love that, because the military, does have its advantages in terms of having access to some things that, civilians don't have access to, one being the VA loan. You mentioned now there's no cap on that. So you could go all the way up to high price. I assume it still has to be conventional though, right? So up to 4 units is the max.
Yeah. There is a loophole, if you will, but it doesn't work. So the guidelines themselves say that if you and another veteran partner and combine your VA loans, you can buy a 5 unit plus 1 unit, or a 4 unit plus 1 additional unit for every other person in the group and an office. So theoretically, like 2 veterans could buy a 5 unit with an office attached, and 3 veterans could buy a 6 unit with an office attached. The problem is that there's no lender out there who will insure the commercial loan. So the guideline says it, but I've never seen it done, and I don't know anyone who can do it. So yeah, generally the 4. But to put in perspective how, like I say, no limit. I know an active duty, I believe he's a captain, maybe a major in the Air Force, who bought a $1.93 million duplex on Venice Beach, 0 down with active duty pay. So as long as your debt to income and credit score work and the bank will lend, like that's your limit. And he was at like a 78% DTI. And that's one of the beauties of the VA loan, is that you can go past 50, which is not good unless you buy something like what he did, where, I mean, this is like the stars aligned for this guy, right? He bought a $1.9 million duplex in Venice Beach, where he's paying a little bit out of pocket, but still saving some of his housing allowance, while the other tenant's paying his mortgage down. And then Venice Beach is appreciated like 40% in the last year and a half. So I want to say, in fact, I looked it up the other day because I was talking about it. The median home price in the area that he bought this duplex is now 2.45. So, like, he's doing fine. So, and the crazy thing is, with how the numbers work out on that, he bought this almost $2 million duplex 0 down. And because he locked a 2.25% interest rate for 30 years fixed, his monthly payment is lower than if an investor had come in and put 25% down on the same property.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So it's pretty ridiculous, because, an investor loan, I mean, that's 5.5%, 6%, even maybe 4.5% in 2020 on the good end, but it's probably a floating rate or a 5-year balloon. And it's a 25-year AM or 20 instead of a 30. And so we did the math, and it's like, dude, you're paying like $200 or $300 a month less than if you had come in with a conventional loan and paid 25% down and turned it into a rental. Like, it's pretty crazy.
That's wild. That's awesome. And wow, I wish.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of hate out there for the VA loan because people just don't understand it. And it's easier for an agent or a lender who doesn't understand it to push people to something they do understand. But there is no better. The only mortgage product that exists at all that might be able to compete with the VA loan is that there's a similar option for doctors. And I haven't done enough research, but there's a similar like primary residence loan for doctors. Other than that, there's nothing on the market that beats the VA loan. I mean, the FHA is great, but it's still not, there's just so many things about the VA that are untouchable. So
Wow, that's incredible. And that's so are you, so you're obviously a huge advocate for it. So is that one of the big things you're doing now, is helping active and even non-active now understand that and the power of it so they can go out and leverage it?
yeah, lots of free education out there about it. I actually just took my NMLS test so that I could feel better talking about it, because I'm a licensed lender. I'm never actually going to actively sell a house. I've been a licensed agent for 4 years and never sold a house. But one of the things we do in the network is, we've been really kind of trying to create this network of lenders and agents that actually understand how to do it. And so people come into the community and they're like, I'm moving here. And I can just say, awesome, this dude right here has bought 12 people in this community houses this year. So he knows what he's doing with the VA loan, and put just to make it even more crazier sounding. We had a guy in the community I introduced to one of my buddies who's an agent in San Diego, and they got under contract on a property. The lender was a guy who used to be my roommate in California. So like one of my best friends, we were partners on a bunch of stuff. He's not even a lender anymore, but he's just amazing. He closed the VA loan on like a $700,000 or $800,000 house in 10 days.
Holy cow.
So now he was comfortable enough with the VA loan that he would guarantee a 17-day close. And I actually heard him on the phone with sellers like, hey, I guarantee you a 17-day close. Any day that I go over for my like a lender problem, I'll pay a per diem to you for every day we go over, which was like $240 a day. He's like, I will personally pay you $240 a day for food and hotel if we go over closing.
Holy
And
cow.
I don't think he ever paid it. So it's pretty
wow,
crazy.
that's insane. That's the fastest conventional closing I've ever heard of. And I thought mine was fast because I got into mine on an FHA, and we were lucky that the listing agent was new. And so, and my agent, she's a killer. And so, we saw it on like a Saturday. They listed on like a Saturday evening, which is like, if you know anything about listing real estate, it's literally the worst possible time listed aside from like Sunday.
Yeah.
We went, looked at it, had an offer in within an hour, but they're like, all right, well, we're going to see what happens when people actually see this, meaning Monday. 18 offers, including cash. We stronghold them into it, but they were like, okay, we have to be able to close in like 3 weeks or less. And we did it. And my lender was like, that's the fastest FHA closing I've ever done.
Yeah, that's pretty insane for the FHA. I mean, and don't get me wrong, like not every lender can close or will even guarantee a 30-day, let alone under a 30-day, the VA loan, which is part of the reason why, I started building the network. So I could say like, hey, if you're in California, this freaking dude right here has, like, that's insane. I mean, that's crazy to me, and people say, oh, the VA is not competitive in a hot market like this. Well, hang on now. If you make an at market or, a little bit above offer with or without an appraisal gap, but you say we'll close in 17 days, like that can be pretty competitive.
Absolutely.
Most cash offers aren't doing that. They're
that
still going
should be
30.
competitive. That's always blown my mind. Like, what do you like? Just because the closing's taking a long time, you're not right? Like, you're not literally the one doing the underwriting and having to I'm in terms of the seller. I'm always so fascinated with like, I want to close as quick as possible. Yes, I understand that. Of course, we all do. But like, if you're getting your money one way or another, I don't really understand the difference in an extra 10 days, never gotten that.
So many variables that go into what makes a strong buyer. And one of the things I hate is when people are like, oh, well, he's going 0 down, so he's not a strong buyer. He's going 3.5% down, so he's not I could have $1 million cash sitting in the bank and I would still go 0 down on the mortgage because of how opportunity cost works. And I would go invest it somewhere else. So like, you have no idea what their actual financial standpoint looks like. So if they're pre-approved, they're pre-approved, go with it.
Agreed. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It is fascinating for sure. Awesome. Well, I love this so much. I love that you're teaching about this, because I know that education, certainly in this aspect, is the most important thing. And, we have these opportunities available to us, especially with conventional stuff, to take advantage. Like I'm even telling some of my friends who are getting for their first time, like go buy at least a duplex.
Yeah.
At least. You're silly for buying a single family residence right now.
This office is a 2-bed, 1-bath with a kitchenette, and it is the basement of a house that is a 4.5 that I Airbnb, so that the Airbnb covers the cost of my office. And I've done 3 house hacks: that duplex, this property, and then in the middle of that, when I lived in San Diego, I was only there for like 18 months, so I didn't feel like buying. And so I found a landlord who agreed to let me rent a 4-bed, 3-bath and sublet bedrooms when my family was out of town. And I just didn't mention that my family was moving back to Missouri, and so they'd be out of town 95% of the year. And so I rented 2 of the bedrooms out on Airbnb, and I was paying $3,000 a month in rent, making $2,500 a month of rent off Airbnb. So I was, living for like $800 a month when you factor in utilities and interest or internet in San Diego, which is like one of the most expensive counties in the country.
Wow.
So I love it. Yeah. There's so many ways to do it. And housing's your biggest expense. If you can get rid of it and then invest that money, you're going to be like so much farther along.
1000%. And is your wife on board with all this? She loves it as well.
Yeah. Sometimes, like the house we're in right now, we bought on a primary, and we ended up, she got a job somewhere else. So we ended up moving into another house as a primary about 35 minutes away. And I cannot refinance this thing out of her name fast enough. So she's on board with it, but she's still very Dave Ramsey. So she doesn't like the debt aspect. And, I've still got a couple, like a credit card that I used for a flip, or a personal loan that I used for a flip that I haven't completely paid off because, I sold the flip and then was like, ooh, another property. And so we're at a point where like, okay, I got to pay that stuff down, and then she'll be happy again and she'll be supportive. So for the most part, she's on board with it all. And she's never told me no. Like, she's been very supportive, but she'll sleep a lot better when I go less loan to value on things.
Yeah. And that's super fair. I mean, and that's what I tell people is, especially when we're headed towards some, obviously the economy is on the path that it's on, and it's a cycle, of course. And so when you get to this point, it is important not to be over leveraged, but people very easily mistake debt as it's all bad. Right. And what I really like educating people on is the difference between what I call good debt and bad debt. Right. I think everybody calls it that. Good debt allows you to get leverage. Real estate, good debt, you can leverage that. Even now, the amount of credit cards out there with 0% financing for 15, 18 months, if you, especially for businesses, if you can go out and, double that, or, at least get, a 20% return before you pay it, like creating debt, like Robert Kiyosaki says, right? Like that's, creating debt is really the key, and just helping people understand the difference between good and bad debt. Your brand new car, bad debt.
Well, but Jonathan, cars have gone up in value this year, so it's not a depreciating asset anymore. Oh my God.
It actually is scarily true and annoying. I should say annoyingly true, but like, how long is that really going to last?
In the short term, it's true. It's the same argument as the people who go online and get pissed off that they're paying 3.75 for a 30-year fixed mortgage. And you're like, dude, that's still amazing. Shut up.
Yeah. In 5 years, people would kill for that. Not even now they would.
Anything under 5% is fine for a primary. I mean, a 30-year fixed, if you can't afford a 5% interest rate, you probably don't need to buy the house.
I think what you're seeing a lot of is now that my generation, our generation's grown up. 08 didn't hit us like it did our parents, right? So like for me, I understood what was happening. Of course, if I really understood, I would have gone and bought 10 houses for 60 grand each. But
I was at boot camp.
Yeah. And so there's some PTSD in society from that for sure, but I just don't really see that happening. I just think the economics are way too strong for that big of a. Certainly there'll be some cooling off and some things will change, but I just can't see the market, whether commercial or residential, just collapsing like that.
Yeah, it is a very weird spot, but I'm inclined to agree with you because we're not doing crazy subprime mortgages. There's a severe lack of inventory, and it's gotten worse. Like people look at like, oh well, what if? I'm like, dude, in 2020, like mid 2020, in 2021, early 2021, the inventory was, it dropped from like 4 months or 6 months or whatever to like 30 days, 2 weeks, crazy low inventory. It's lower now than it was then.
Mhm.
It's obscene how, like, sometimes I feel like it's cooling. And then I listed a property that we did like a lipstick reno on. I mean, we might have spent 15 grand in this thing. We listed it for 215 on a Monday and had it under contract for 228 on Tuesday, like with like 15 offers. So it's like, maybe it's not cooling down. I don't know. But with inflation and everything else, like it's hard to argue for a crash. I think a slowdown or a stall, yeah, but I think the argument for a crash is difficult to make.
I think that we have, despite my disagreement with a lot of the legislators that are in the positions they're in, and meaning like pretty much all of them, despite my disagreement with all of that, over the last however many years, I think that we have positioned the economy, at least in some senses, to not necessarily take such a massive downfall.
Yeah.
But I'm not an economist. I do not have a degree from MIT. People get paid a lot of money to predict these things, and even they're wrong. So I don't really feel that weird putting those predictions out there.
So I saw yesterday, I Googled it because I was doing a podcast for Bigger Pockets Money, and someone mentioned, he said something, and I was like, there's no way that's accurate. So I went to Google and I found like 6 articles that validated it. And so apparently the median home price in the US in beginning of 2021 was like 323 or something like that. It's currently 429. And then and one of the articles went far enough in to say, okay, and with 11.5% inflation that we've seen over those 2 years, blah, 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 it's still a $68,000 increase in actual like median home price. And so when you think through that, like, okay, if we're at 429, if we had a 25% hit to the market today, which is pretty substantial, we'd be almost at where we were 2 years ago. Like, it would take a lot to, like, people are like, oh, it's gonna be '08 again. To get back to '08 prices would be like a 60 or 70% hit. But cost of materials is too high, housing inventory is too low. Like, I can't imagine that 70% of people are gonna say, yeah, we'll rent and just like sell their house at a loss.
Agreed.
So,
And I read a Wall Street Journal article the other day that said that demand for Class A apartments is the highest it's ever been, and developers can't keep up. So you see stuff like that, and you're like, okay. And listen, certain markets are for sure going to be hit harder than others, because you look at, like Phoenix learned its lesson, and now it's the hottest market in the country, or like top 3, depending on where you look, right? But they got absolutely crushed from '08, but they learned their lesson, right? So I think that '08 like really was so necessary in terms of helping us realize that, obviously we can't do that dumb stuff anymore, but just setting ourselves up. Now people personally don't want to be over levered. Like personal finance wise, I think people got woken up. And of course, because of '08, development went down, and now we're at this housing shortage. And I think that's going to carry us.
yeah. And then you look at, the reason the '08 crash triggered, I mean, there were a lot of things, but a lot of it was subprime mortgages, people who shouldn't have been able to buy the house they bought and then had adjustable rate mortgages. Like that's just a recipe for disaster. And I'd love to see the statistic on what percentage of homeowners refinanced in the last 2 years, but I can look at the data for how much, like what percentage of mortgage companies' business was refis. It was more than half for the last 2 years. More than half of their business was refinances. So I would be willing to bet that at least 40%, if not more, people in this country, both between having equity and interest rates, refied in the last 2 years. And so if you think 30 or 40% of the economy refinanced, and that might be high, I don't know, maybe it's low, a ton of people refinanced. But if all these people locked in 2 to 3.5% mortgage rates on 30-year fixed rates, like that doesn't crash an economy. You can make
No,
that payment. And they had to be qualified for the loan this time. So I feel like that's a big piece too, is that homeowners aren't, it's going to be a much smaller percentage of homeowners who are behind on payments.
agreed. And what that does is, on top of, all the money we printed, that increases the influx of capital even more. And so what I foresee happening is, because another sort of thing we learned from '08 is, now people are able to recognize, like, okay, where's their yield, right? I think people are now because of access to information, people have become more sophisticated investors. You certainly, of course, have your people who are going to live and die by the stock market. Good for you guys. Good luck with that. But now people are, whenever there's something does cool off or come down, you're going to see a rush of capital, and boom, it's right back up. Like, I really think that there's capital just waiting to be deployed, and wherever, that yield comes, they're just going to deploy the capital there and bring it back up. But
yeah, I got a lot of somewhat wealthy friends who are, I don't want to say they're stashing cash, right? Like they're still investing, but they have a heavier cash position now than they had in the past with that, preparation mentality. So there's definitely some credence there.
I love it. One thing I want to ask you about is this cattle financing.
Yeah, that's so it's just kind of a fun story that plays into the, people, the rich dad poor dad talks about the mentality of, instead of saying I can't afford that, you say how can I afford that. And so I said that, I bought the duplex, and it was like 2.5 years later that I bought the 10 unit. Well, in the middle of there, I did make a purchase, but it wasn't an investment, right? So we owned a primary on 5 acres, and the guy behind us owned 10 acres, but it was 2 plots. And we told him forever, if you ever sell the middle plot, like if you ever sell your house, we'll buy the middle plot. We'll pay more than whatever it's worth. Like, we'll make it worth your while, but we want to own the 10 and you have 5, rather than vice versa. He's like, I'm never going to sell. And then his job was like, hey, we need you to relocate to Tennessee. And so he sold. And so he called us, and we ended up, we overpaid. Land was probably worth $6,000 an acre at the time. We paid $8,000. So, I mean, not a crazy overpay, but it was one of those things where it's like 5 acres, primary residence, not really a cash flow play, $350 a month mortgage. Like, that's a liability. That's not an asset. I mean, and granted, with the way prices have gone up, it's probably doubled in value. So yeah, an asset, land is definitely still an asset, but it was one of those things like, well, how do I justify paying for this thing that is going to bleed me dry until it goes up in value and I sell? And we had like 4 cows, because my father-in-law is a cattle farmer. So my wife had always just had a couple cows laying around. And so I was like, hey, what happens if we get 10 acres, how many head, what can we have on it? My father was like, 8 to 10. Like, okay, well, how much does an additional 4 cows bring in a year? Oh, and it's probably an average 12 to 1,500 sale price. So let's call it $5,000. Okay, well, $5,000. Let's do the math in public, like 3,500 or 350. Like, cool. Well, we're cash flow positive, and so we literally have, we have 8 to 10 cows, and depending on how they breed and prices of beef and whatever, we are break even or up to about 1,500 in cash flow on an annual basis, and we get the ag write-off. So
I was going to say, I think there's a write-off in there too, isn't there?
And more importantly than the ag write-off and the cash flow, I have a Schedule F, which is not something that a lot of lenders see and a lot of people see, because most people don't have a Schedule F return, which is farm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because I have a Schedule F, when I buy a 4-wheeler last year, it's a write-off, because that's clearly a business necessity, not just something Dave wants to joyride in his land. So
1,000%.
Yeah.
Wait, people joyride 4-wheelers? No. Those are farm tools. That's
absolute responsibility. Yeah. Yeah. So so it's wonderful, right? You're like, oh, I need a gator and a shop, and they're all for the farm.
They're all for the farm.
Yeah. And apparently, and I haven't tested this yet, so I don't know, but apparently, if you build a shop, like a pole barn or whatever, and you denote it as a like single use, like one-time use shop that is sole purpose is cattle or whatever, you can accelerate depreciation 100% year one. So I haven't done that, but I've had the conversations with the CPA. So
May
hoping
want to
that I
look
can,
into it because we're about to lose 20% of our bonus depreciation starting next year unless I think before it goes any lower, they'll bring it back to 100, but
I mean, that's one of those things that it doesn't hurt them in the long run because they're going to recapture it.
right.
So who cares? But it helps investors stimulate the economy.
Well,
So it's
did
like,
you see they changed the term for accredited now?
I didn't. What did they change it to?
Yeah. So, well, it's in the new Jobs Act. So I'm not sure it's fully passed, but they're
Okay.
changing the accreditation to, I'll have to look it up exactly. But one of the aspects I know about it is if the investment is 10% or less of your total investable assets. So let's say you have, so like for me, I'm not accredited, but if I accredited by the initial, the original definition, but if the amount I'm putting in is 10% or less of my total investable assets, then I can check that I'm accredited for that deal. So now I can now go to a 506c deal that only allows that. And as long as my investment meets that, I'm accredited for that deal.
You know what you're going to see? So a lot of 506Cs, the minimum is 50K, which would mean that you need a $500,000 net worth in order to be able to check the accreditation box. I guarantee you that with that passing, you're going to see a whole lot of 25K minimums. Like, oh, you've got $300,000 in equity in your primary residence? Accredited.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, that's cool. That'll open the doors for a lot of people, which I love.
I just think that the 506c is just from from almost every standpoint, it allows the operators more breathing room, right? Like with a 506b, you have to be so like, okay, I know this person, I can prove it, and sure, when you're initially raising from your friends and family, of course, right? That's going to pass all day long. But once you get beyond that, even, 1-2 degrees of separation, you then are like,
how do I document
and
this?
listen, the SEC, this is no way legal or financial advice, but typically the SEC is not going to come knocking unless an investor alerts them that something's going wrong, right?
Yeah.
So you have people who are skirting around this and maybe not, but then they also can't, be like, hey, we even when you close on it, you still can't send that out to the public. It still has to be your private list. Yep. So I just think that with the 506c allowing you to kind of market it and those kind of things, it was much needed.
Yeah, it'll increase the flow of currency, and that's what the world wants, or
absolutely
the government wants.
Agreed. Cool. Well, I've got 5 questions I ask all of my guests here at the end. It's the final 5, so we'll jump to those.
All right.
First one: best advice you've gotten from a mentor.
I don't even know. Well, if we're going from a mentor, then I would say doing when you ask. So one of the guys who's been somewhat instrumental in my life, and I won't name,
just kidding.
Yeah, no, I asked him at one point, like, what was it about our interaction that facilitated you continuing to bring me or to be willing to give me advice, right? Like I wasn't paying him for mentorship. And his answer, actually, it was him and another guy. And the other guy was the one who said it. They were sitting next to each other. The other guy was like, that's easy. It's the fact that when he gave you advice, you did it. And like, there you go. Like the number of people who reach out to me and ask me something, and then like 6 months later, they ask something else and they didn't do the first thing. It's like, dude, like, sorry.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. I love that. And that's true. And, seeing that, and of course we all have experienced that in like personal life, but when it comes to this stuff, that's what separates whether or not you want to continue, because your time becomes valuable. And if someone's not even willing to do that little tiny thing, you're like, all right, well, you're not going to do a big thing. So
yeah.
What is it about your career that makes you feel like you're fulfilling your why?
I don't really have a career anymore, which is kind of nice. But I think the thing that makes me feel like I'm fulfilling my why is when I get told, that somebody's sharing my information with young vets, or somebody comes and shares a success story, and I'm able to sit back and think like, like the duplex we talked about earlier, like that dude's got $500,000 in equity 18 months later. that's pretty cool, right? And he's in my Facebook group every now and then commenting and being like, oh yeah, do this. I talked to Dave, blah, blah, blah. And so it's just the knowledge that some of the stuff I'm doing is helping other people set themselves up for success.
Awesome. I love that so much. Favorite non-real estate or investment related book?
Ayn Rand, Fountainhead, and Atlas Shrugged. That's my fiction. The only 2 fiction books I think I've read in God knows how long, and they're both amazing.
Nice. I love that. I'll add them I love getting a nice fiction recommendation. It's always good to mix that in there.
Full disclosure, they're both totally about capitalism and still have very real, lessons to be learned, but they're fictional and they're awesome and they're long as all get out.
That's why, like, when people tell me that the book of Proverbs is really great for business from the Bible, the book of Proverbs, I'm like, we're talking about the Bible here, but apparently it's got some good insight. So who knew?
Sense.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Man, I almost, there's so many good answers there. I'd probably go with flight.
You gotta fly.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it'd be fun.
What's the best way for people to get a hold of you and learn more?
Google Military Millionaire and we'll pop up on all your favorite platforms. If you want to talk to me directly, the one platform that I still try to respond daily on is Instagram. So from Military to Millionaire.
Dave, I cannot thank you enough. This has been very fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this was a good show. I appreciate it. And I'm glad we talked about things that were different than every other show I'm on. So it's always fun to change it up a little bit.
Right? This is like a conversation between 2 friends and not like, an interview.
Yeah, very, very fluid. I liked it. You're good.
Love it. Thanks. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching today's episode. I hope you really enjoyed it. Listen, I know it's cliche and you hear it all the time, but please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you know when the next video is coming out. Even though this is technically a daily podcast, you know it's coming out the next day. We have a ton of content coming your way. So please like and subscribe. It helps a ton. Leave comments. Would love to know what you guys think. And we will see you on the next one. Thanks so much.